we pamper the artist a bit, but that was on purpose because Patty and Sasha, who started this, basically did weekend shows and said, these are really hard to do as an artist. We're going to make this as easy as we can.
Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of the TF Cast. I'm Willis. We're in the Solarium and it is the 25th of October.
And I'm your host, Jacob Bases. Today with us, we have Co-Director of the GSR Fine Art Festival, Tom Bliese, here to talk about the art festival this year and all things related to GSR. Tom, if you could introduce yourself to the audience and just let us know what's going on over at the GSR Fine Art Festival. Let's go.
Have at it. Very good. My name is Tom Bliese. I am a retired professor from the theater department at MSU. This is our 21st year doing this, and I have been involved in it since the third or fourth one. We needed somebody that could herd all of the little, anyway. The GSR Fine Art Festival, it is a juried fine art show. It is the Saturday and Sunday after Thanksgiving, the 25th and 26th. There are going to be over 50 visual artists and over 24 authors. There is a bistro for food and drink, including local beers, wines, etc. It's catered, so there's also food available. There is live music. We actually have, as of last year, taken over not only one big room, but two rooms. Wow. And now we have the hallway in between. So the live music will actually be coming from sort of a third space. Every hour, we have a different musical group or individual. It is the purpose behind all of this is to create an event to showcase the fact that we have a lot of really good artists right around here. You don't need to go to Chicago. You don't need to go to New York City to find fine art. It's here, and it's being done by the people that are around us. It gives them a chance to show their work. It gives our audience a chance to talk to the people who make this, because sometimes discussing what that process is as fascinating as looking at the work itself.
Sure. Yeah. This going on for 20 plus years already, and your involvement being so long, has that been the stated purpose for this period of time?
All through the whole thing. It started actually with Patty Conlon, who does the Stone's Throw Gallery in St. Peter. She was with a little thing called Harpy's Bazaar way back when, which predates a lot of young people, but it was in Old Town. She was the goldsmith in residence. Okay. And my daughter happened to be friends with her daughter, discovered Patty, and the next thing we knew, she became a liberal arts major with a focus in jewelry making. Came back from a couple of years in Florida and said, Patty, we should get together and talk. And Patty said, no, we need a goldsmith reunion. So they did a one day in the Harpy's Bazaar space. And Morgan Creek was starting up in advertising, so we had some free wine, which is where the local beer and wine tradition started. Harpy's closed 2 years later, and it was put up or shut up. So we decided to try the YWCA. There were 8 artists for that, and there was a grand piano in one room, and Cindy Rupp started playing, and that's all of a sudden we had live music, but we were packed.
Oh, wow.
So the following year, we moved to the Ellerby room, that gorgeous Art Deco bank room, rattled around in it for a couple of years, and then we didn't fit anymore. So we moved across the hall, moved into half of the ballroom, the dining room ballroom space, rattled around, didn't fit anymore, opened the wall up, used the whole space, and we're now at the point that we're using all of that space, the hallway and the Ellerby room. The Ellerby room is now officially the Book Nook, which has got most of our authors in it. It turns out that not all authors and artists only have talent in one media.
Sure.
I have a couple of painters who do books.
Okay.
I have a couple of authors who do fabrics and pottery. So you'll find a little of
they
each
go
in
the
both
middle,
rooms.
or just all over the place?
Yeah. What kind of what are the authors? What is the programming like for them? Are they're showing their wares, I presume, and networking?
Yes, that is correct. The purpose for all of them is to show their work and to talk about their work and to sell their work. So they'll all have whatever they have available will be out there. They love to talk about what it is they do, and in the case of the visual artists, show what it is they're doing and how they get there. And in point of fact, one of the other groups that we have with us, I think this is our 7th or 8th year now, is the Mankato Makerspace.
Oh, cool.
Great.
There is a corner now. When you're trying to set this thing up visually, and you end up with little holes that nothing fits in them, which is where the bistro sits. It's a great place to sit, relax, talk about what you've seen, maybe decide what you want to buy. But in another of those corners, we have, I believe it's going to be between 10 and 12 people actually making things. There will be a potter's wheel there.
Oh, cool.
Our very favorite leather worker will be making a pair of boots there. And they, again, really love to talk about the process, because what Makerspace is the space to learn how to do this and then to practice and improve on that craft form.
Yeah.
They love us. We love them. And it's yet another way to expand this entire process. One of the other things that we have done, and this started, I don't even know how many years ago, but it started with Dana. And we have an up-and-coming artist space. The artists in our space, they pay a jury fee. If they get admitted, they then pay a fee to pay for the booth. The up-and-coming artist is out in the overall lobby between all of the venues. They cannot sell anything. They are also, they don't think quite ready to buy a booth, but it's a chance to visually be out in front of people. They are paid through a grant from Prairie Lakes. And there are they help pay for the music as well, just coincidentally. But it's a chance to see sort of an artist studio with the artist working in it. And in addition to having good quality work to show, I need people that also don't mind being interrupted. Some artists do. And it gives them people a chance to talk to them about what that process is they're looking at.
Triple Falls is a media and event production company based in southern Minnesota. We specialize in multicam live streaming and sound and lighting for event productions. Contact us today to learn more, or subscribe online to join our newsletter and stay up to date about events and things going on in the area. Thanks for tuning in. Back to your show.
I should also mention another slightly bizarre tangential part of this process. Saturday, in the space outside of the hockey rink, is Tuba Christmas.
Sure. I'm unfamiliar with Tuba Christmas, if you want to fill me in on that one.
That's easy. It's a bunch of people that play tubas, and they get together once a year. They have a practice in the space, and then they do a concert for an hour with Christmas music with just tubas.
That sounds like a great time.
It really
does,
is fun. Yeah.
And it's such a cavernous space. I'm sure that makes
It's
quite the
beautiful.
sound.
The echo in there is awesome. Yeah.
And that's happening at the same time?
It is part of our show, but it's in a slightly separate space because we really don't want them right on top of us, because that many tubas is a little loud.
Yeah, there's some kind of term for like more than 3 tubas in one space? There should be.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Well, that sounds exciting.
Who's jurying it? Like what?
We do not tell people who they are, but we have a small group of artists, most of whom actually have been in the show or are in the show. And we don't need a unanimous consent, but we do need a majority. The other thing, we also have to balance how many of what category we have. I remember one year being accused of, because, oh, by the way, GSR does stand for Goldsmith Reunion.
Oh, wow.
And we renamed it because we were getting people saying, well, I'm not a goldsmith. Why the heck would I go to a reunion?
Yeah.
Or I can't afford gold. And the answer to that is, that's where we started. That's not where we are.
Sure.
But that process is one where I remember the year vividly. Somebody actually came up to me and said, why don't you call this the glass reunion? Because there were all these glass artists. And I went, and I looked at the list, and by golly, there were more of them than there were jewelers. But it's just coincidence. We get strong years and weak years for each of the media. Some of the things I enjoy is the fact that there are painters there that look like they're photographs, and there are photographers there that look like they're paintings.
Yeah.
And if you can't tell the difference, maybe it doesn't make a difference.
Sure. Go for it.
As the festival's grown, because you mentioned there was 8 vendors at one of the early versions,
Right.
and now it's we showed us a photo recently that has didn't count exactly, but probably over 40 people.
There are about 50 visual artists and 24 authors.
Okay,
Roughly. So it's around 70, 75.
Wow. That's quite the collection, and I'm sure the job of curating and herding, working with such a large group of artists is quite the feat. But what's been important over 20 years of this festival that you've seen like it become such a strong pillar?
There are a couple of things. I think the first thing is, as we kept getting bigger, we were concerned that our quality was going to slip because we were letting more people into bigger spaces.
Yeah.
And we were blessed to discover the quality got better. There have been people who have applied and been with us for a number of years that aren't with us this year. And I mentioned this briefly in an interview we did. We've got a 7.5 minute look at last year's show.
Yeah.
If you go to YouTube and look for GSR Fine Art, no S, A-R-T, Festival, you will find that video. And it basically said the year we were not able to do the show during COVID, we had an electronic version of it. So you could go online and buy things right from the artist with that. That has proven to be a double blessing because that is still with us. It is now under the auspices of Twin Rivers Council for the Arts. But all of the people that get into our show also get free access to Shop Art Midwest and can sell their work. We get nothing from any of that. It's a free base for them. But the point is, if you see something you like, you talk to the artist, you guys negotiate the price, you negotiate the shipping. We just provide the channel for that to happen. But in the process of all that happening, when we came back the next year, I realized that a large number of our artists, because they were still creating, had more time to just create, and what they were putting together was 2 steps above where it had been the year before that. So they all grew as artists in the time period when they couldn't be selling their stuff, which felt good as well.
COVID was such a creative boom for so many
in a very
people.
real sense.
Yeah.
And I actually believe that we're going to see like a whole like wave of COVID musicians too. I've read that during COVID, like major retailers were just straight up selling out of stringed instruments. There are just thousands of new guitarists out there because people started during COVID. So I'm waiting for that 5 to 10 years of people to mature out of that.
I think the same is true with visual artists.
Definitely,
It's like, geez, I really loved art in high school, but I'm a business major, and now I'm laid off and I'm sitting at home. I'm going to paint it. In fact, one of the interviews last year was with one of the painters who basically said she was going nuts. She needed a stress reliever, and she started painting.
I think we might have interviewed a person recently.
Yeah, was
too.
it Mary?
I cannot remember.
Oh,
I'm sorry, but there are so many of them floating around out there.
No,
But-
we've heard a lot of stories like that. It's wild to imagine, the impact of something like that on art and entertainment and just the way that people want to spend their time. We've all probably shifted parts of our lives around to
Yeah.
reevaluate some of that.
I think Gen Z and, in general has a different idea about how work-life balance should be when it comes to creativity too. And I think that they've got basically the right idea there. There's no reason that, we shouldn't decorate our time and space.
Yep. Yep.
So
And I think the other thing that goes along with that is the fact that by virtue of having that flexibility, some people have chosen to go back to the office part-time and to be at home part-time, which means there are more parents actively involved in parenting rather than just one partner. It's more likely to be both of them. So we may end up as a healthier nation. We can pray for that.
With the artists who are at this event, what's the demographics? Are you seeing new artists joining?
Every year there are
becoming-
new artists.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
A lot of our audience is actually probably we've interviewed a number of people who I see in that photo, and a bunch of our audience is probably considered trying to go to the GSR to sell their work or show their stuff. So like what's it like for someone who's new to it, maybe someone a little younger who hasn't done an art fair at this scale before?
I would recommend, first of all, everybody should come to the show, but they especially should show up, look at what it is that is in their area perhaps, talk to those artists. I come from academia and from the art world. One of the things that almost all art programs don't do enough of is teach you how to make it a business. They're all concerned about the art, which they should be, but they don't then say, but you can't make a living unless you do this.
we talk about that so much on this program. A lot of times we find that a lot of the artists who are really making it are people who have circumstances that allow them to otherwise create more art. And, there's a lot of just privilege rolled up in that, which is, that's just kind of how it works. People need to have the space to get good at things because I believe everyone has creative energy in them that's wanting to get out. And it's those of us who actually end up with the ability to create that do. And you hear that a lot when people are talking about business side of it.
Right. One of the other things, and my daughter is a classic example of this. She's a jeweler, but she calls herself a goldsmith, which is a pricier jeweler because the gold costs more. But she much prefers working in that particular media. She does other things, but that's her choice. And it's about price point. To be a jeweler costs a lot of money as initial outlay and all the materials and tools that you need to make it work right. Whereas technically speaking, a painter doesn't cost as much as the initial material outlay.
Yeah. Or, really, I can't imagine what it would be like to go about trying to be a goldsmith for the first time or start something like going down the path of becoming a stained glass artist or something.
Yeah, and the same
extremely-
thing is true there because you've got to have such a stockpile of stained glass and then all of the leading and everything else to put it all together. And that's one of the things that some people that walk in our doors don't get. It's like, well, I could get that at Walmart. I said, no, you can't get that at Walmart. You can get something kind of looks like it, but there are 55 million of that exact item. There's only one of this.
I think if they maybe were exposed to how those things were created too, like I've seen some videos of those cities where those paintings that are, actually made with paint are created, what they look like. And it's pretty unsettling to see that. I don't know. When it comes to like fine art in your home, like a painting that costs as much as a television seems cheap. You could look at it for a decade or so and then still sell it. Like, but that actually really kind of led into my next question was, I imagine that in the 70s, when this kind of started, there was a higher regard for that kind of craft that kind of melded into art.
Yes.
And is there a resurgence in that going on?
I believe yes, and I think it's due to COVID. I have enough life to tell you that the first of this art movement happened in the late 60s and 70s, and they were called hippies.
Sure.
It's where the Renaissance festivals came from. We're going to get together every weekend. We're going to do this and that, and I'm going to put some beads together and try to get a little money. And the next thing you know, you're doing entertainment, you're charging money, it becomes commercialized, but that was part of that handcraft process. Some of that was a reaction to my dad's generation, which was the Industrial Revolution. The uniformity, the mass production, and you get a little tired of it being that way, and somebody starts decorating something that they got that they weren't quite happy with, and the next thing you know, it's become a hobby, and then somebody wants to get it from you, so you charge them for it, and now it's a sideline, and then you go, maybe I don't have to work 9 to 5 anymore. Maybe I can do this instead.
Sure.
But as with all of the other art forms, and I've said this to former students time after time, don't be a theater major unless that's what you have to be. You will not get rich, but you will be happy. And I think that's true with all of the art forms. Music soothes.
It's not a super direct path or an easy one or a fruitful one.
If
No
your goal in
guarantees.
life is to make a fortune, go for it. If your goal in your life is to be happy, that's not necessarily the same path.
Yeah, and another thing that seems to ring very true and with a lot of artists that you talk to and a lot of the success that you see, and I just think you can't get focused on it, is that the quality of the work is never going to be connected to the success or even the life of the artist. And I believe this with music too, that, in this community, we have world-class musicians, some of which we've never met. There's probably someone picking away at a guitar in their living room who we will just simply never know who is better than something that we'll ever hear.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it works.
Yeah. And by the same token, you never know when some great band invites some poor audience member up on stage, and the next thing you know, there's a voice coming out of that was like, whoa. Yeah. It happens on a real regular basis, and it feels good. It really does.
Have you seen, over the years of this festival, a lot of artists grow kind of from that phase of first experimenting into business and then eventually becoming a sustained
Very
art
much
business?
so. In point of fact, while we're a conduit for that, there's been a bit of a downside, which is the fact that some of those artists have gotten so successful, they don't do our show anymore. I have a potter, a friend of mine actually, that he had a booth and a half here for years and years and years. And he hasn't been with me since pre-pandemic, because he's doing all of the plates and bowls for top-end restaurants. And he's got a waiting list. So he doesn't need to do us anymore. We've got a closer example of that. AJ Potter in St. Peter. His first work was really nice. His next work was better than that. He was one of the people that over that 2-year time period blossomed. Fantastic. Has not applied this year because he can't keep up with demand. He said, I won't have enough to put in the booth.
Sounds like pottery's an opportunity.
You just never know. You do not know.
No, that's awesome to see that, sometimes the value is you don't promise to be the perfect festival for everyone looking to sell their stuff online to restaurants. But like you said, connecting with more people in our local audience, I think it sparkles as an opportunity for someone doing art in the area who can show up in a professional way and sell to. So we talked about how there was about 70 artists there. How many estimated people would you expect for the weekend? Just people coming through.
Coming
too.
through.
Yeah.
I always start that answer with pre-pandemic.
Okay.
Okay. In years leading up to the pandemic, the last 3 years, we averaged 2,000 people coming in the door during those 2 days. The first year we came back, it was 860 something.
Okay.
Last year it was 1,270 something. I'm hoping to get back to 2,000 or above this year, and once that starts happening, I think we'll be in good shape again.
Yeah.
It had grown every year, and we're growing again,
Yeah.
but we had to start over a little bit.
A little bit of a
I
reset.
feel like that's how it's just been. Like overall, like live events, people have been slow. Music's been a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your average? Are there a lot of people who are there just to view, or like what kind of customer is coming through? If it's not people buying for their restaurants,
we do both artist surveys and audience surveys, and of the people in the audience who have responded, it's about 50-50 that they've bought something, and we're talking first time people. Once our problem is to get people to come to the show to see it. Once they've been there, they pretty much circle the calendar and come back year after year. They just love it.
Cool.
It's a high quality show. We pamper the artist a bit, but that was on purpose because Patty and Sasha, who started this, basically did weekend shows and said, these are really hard to do as an artist. We're going to make this as easy as we can. So we have volunteers that help with load in, with load out, taking bathroom breaks, et cetera, et cetera. We provide them with bagels in the morning, a little bit of free meal and drink during the day to try to make it. It's a community of artists. And we're the host. Is what it really boils down to.
It's awesome that you can offer more of an experience. I know when I've heard of it from artists in the past, just people who've done some small shows in the area and are sort of considering going to GSR, they see it as a good opportunity to connect with a wider audience. It in most cases would be a much bigger show than they've been a part of. And with it comes a slightly higher price tag, but it's really great to think that to hear that you're thinking about the experience of the artist as being really important too. Because I mean, we've done so many events knowing that you've got a little bit of an assist or a professional level of experience or a little bit of food to tide you over.
Right.
Little things like that can go a
They really
real
do
long
help,
way
yeah.
in making sure that you can do your best.
When we started to have authors come in, I have a couple of those authors that help us with the jury process. And it was like, how do you do this? And we started with using covers of books, for example, because that's the visual part of their art form, and a sample of their writing, et cetera. And I said, how do we do the culling process? And they both basically said, the prices you're asking for a table or a booth are a little high as compared to some other places, but that means that somebody that's self-publishing a book is not going to apply, and because they wouldn't have gotten in, coincidentally, we won't really need to worry about that. The people we're looking at are people who do series books or have a niche that has worked well for them. Oh, we just got a new author that I'm looking forward to tremendously. She has a Vikings cookbook. And I'm not talking about the football team. I'm talking about the food that the Vikings made. And as a result of the fact that she's sort of a historian storyteller, she also does pottery because the Vikings were crock-pot people.
Oh, wow.
So she made the pottery and is selling it.
I would have never imagined that the Vikings were crockpot people. I didn't I guess I thought the crockpot probably came around the time-saving era of America, when.
Well, if you think about it, the crockpot even in primitive society, you start something cooking, you have lunch, you put some more stuff in it, you have dinner.
Sure. Like
just keep
one of those
the-
like living stews that just
keep
never
the
stop.
fire going. Yeah.
Very much so.
I guess it's really interesting in me, the length of the thing that this has been going on since the 70s. Like you said, like what was the art community here in Mankato like during that period of time? Like,
I came in 77.
okay.
The theater program was a secret. We knew about it, but nobody else really did. That has changed over the years. Mankato, starting about 20, maybe 25 years ago, started to realize that art had value, not just socially and not just for our souls, but economically. And that's when the sidewalk sculpture tour
sculptural
started,
walk.
for example.
How long has that been going on for? That's been going on this long?
I don't think it's been 20 years. I think didn't they just celebrate, what was it, a 10th or I should know that, but I'm afraid I don't. But I do remember when I was on the Twin Rivers Council for the Arts Board, there's a poetry group in town. And they had a competition, and they chose a number of poems, and they made stamps. And in downtown Mankato, when the city puts in new sidewalk, they stamp a poem into the concrete.
That's fun.
But you got to know it because it's down underneath our feet. The silos. Oh my gosh, the silos, right?
Yeah.
And murals popping up all over town. And next weekend is Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
Only the third year, but boy, has it blown up.
Yeah.
We have become a really good art community.
Yeah, I mean, I would like, the point of the show is that we cover the art community, and it has just kind of been an echoing of, like, basically every time we go somewhere, someone tells us about some other thing that I'm embarrassed I didn't know about. It's just
Absolutely.
there's so much going on.
Yeah.
My daughter has they live in Bellingham, Washington, except for January, February, and March when they bought the house behind my house. And people go, wait, you're coming from Washington State to Mankato, Minnesota in the winter? Yes, because they like the weather better here. They were born and raised. She was born and raised here. Mount Cato is a mile down the road. Her nieces are a couple of hours up from here.
Yeah.
But since they're only here part-time, we just had some renters from Texas that were in the space for the last 2 months. And as they left, they said, we love this place. There's always 2 or 3 things to go to. There's always something going on. One of the glass blowers, this is a fun little story. Remember I mentioned the third year we were in the YWCA and there were 8 artists? 2 of them were glass blowers. They're called Bob and Kurt. They've been with us ever since. He lives 4 doors down from me.
Sure.
So they're blowing glass as we speak. Well, in a couple hours. But who knew that in our little West Mankato neighborhood, there's an honest-to-gosh glass blowing lab?
Wow. Well, who would have known there's a production?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, right?
Yeah, it's wild. It's cool. It's cool to create spaces for people like that to connect and to share and to grow their business. Is there like does Mankato need? Probably even more opportunities like this. It certainly isn't like oversaturated with or under. It's still a very vibrant opportunity for artists to be able to show their work more, and probably for organizers of things like this to try and make it happen. As someone who is involved in the organizing of this, like, are there any other festivals that you've experienced or been to in other areas that you're kind of drawing from? Or are you really just looking to what Mankato needs to
it's not,
here?
and it's Mankato, but it's not just Mankato. We're drawing from Owatonna and
Great point.
Waseca,
Thank you.
from Le Sueur, from Blue Earth, New Ulm.
Okay.
So it's literally the greater
regional,
Mankato
yeah.
area that we're focusing on. I think one of the things, the same weekend we open, that Friday night they turned the Christmas lights on in the park.
Oh, really?
So hey, I got this great idea, Maud. Let's go to Mankato. Let's watch them do the parade and turn the lights on in the park, and then tomorrow we'll go to the GSR show. We are relying on the fact that the weekend that we're doing our show is also the weekend of the hockey game between us and Michigan, which is apparently the hockey game in the circuit because, boy, are they enemies. But the point is, we're open Saturday. The hockey game is Saturday. If they get there early, they're going to wonder what that music is coming out of the hall, look in the door and go, oh my gosh, what's this thing? Oh, they're open tomorrow? Guess what we're doing tomorrow? Make a weekend out of it, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
That's great. So you're thinking more about how to collaborate with the other ongoing events and like stack up an awesome weekend for people than you are worried about competition or any kind of.
I remember when they first opened the Civic Center and they were bringing in touring companies of musicals, and somebody asked the department chair, Paul Hustles, if this was concerning to him. He said, no. First of all, we offer a product that's at least as good as what they're bringing in, but more to the point, if they're exposed to theater, they're going to want to see more theater, and they'll come to us. So we're growing the art form and the audience for it. When I was teaching Introduction to Theater, it was always, this is not to make you a theater major. In fact, if you want to be a theater major, come to my office and I'll try to talk you out of it. Only if I can't will I say, okay, maybe you can be a theater major. We're here to make you a possible audience member, an intelligent audience member, one who wants this as part of your life.
I don't feel overwhelmed with theatrical opportunities here either. You know,
No.
I'm rarely choosing between two productions.
I think we've talked about that a lot too. It's like with concerts and whatnot, it's easy to assume that someone else hosting something could be drawing from your success, and I think it's normal for people to like get a little worried about stuff like that. But really, most of the time, it's not at all how it works, and you'd be better off like seeing the positive benefits of more going on because of where you go together.
In that case, I would say that those people are probably relying more upon the audience that's attached to a venue than the audience that's attached to their work. Because, you know, there are plenty of people, like everyone wants more music in Mankato. I've heard that constantly as long as I've been here. So if you're thinking about cutting the crowd that's already at a venue that day, I guess I would, you know, question like why they aren't going to your show in the first place, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because everyone wants music. I wouldn't believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think a little bit just outside of Mankato, if you're looking at theater, you've got MSU, you've got Bethany, you've got Gustavus Adolphus, you've got Merely Players, you've got Mankato Playhouse. There's a short festival, one act or three acts.
The film festival?
Well, and then there's the film festival stuff. And there's a couple of those now that are up and running.
No.
You can't get too much art. You really just can't.
And you know, it is kind of different opportunities for different folks too. Like I feel like there's the more to do, the more like basically the more groups are going to form.
Right.
You got any interesting projections or visions for art in Mankato in the future? You know, things that we could kind of keep an eye out for, look forward to?
One of the things is something my daughter actually went back to graduate school for. She has an MFA in arts leadership. And her passion, and she's working on the second building now in Bellingham, is to create large spaces that have studios in them. They're not living quarters that happen to have a studio with it, but they're the studio spaces for these artists. Because, and boy, has this been proven to be true, if you're living in a building with a bunch of other artists, you feed off of each other. And the next thing you know, you're doing multimedia, or you're taking somebody's idea in fabric and turning it into a painting. And that we need more of that. We have a couple of small ones, but we could use more. We could always use more.
We know of a couple as well around here. So when I'm thinking about that, I'm drawing on a couple of examples of people who've, had great luck getting into a space like that where they're bouncing off other musicians or other artists. But how do we look at creating more space like that? Is it as spaces go out of fashion in one thing, we kind of have to revitalize them with the new
And that's
vision?
part of the trick, of course, is that by and large, you need to find a landlord that is willing to say, I don't need as much profit. Because you can't charge as much rent as if it was a high class apartment complex.
That makes it a non-starter in a lot of situations, or at least quite difficult.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if an investment banker's looking at it, they're they're going to want to shut that down.
Yeah.
That's tough. I mean, is that just the plight of artists needing cheaper studio space? And I mean, it's not easy to run an art business. Nobody gets into art like theater expecting that it's going to be like the easy path to riches. So maybe it's kind of just part of the journey.
It is, and part of it is also due to the fact that not only is it a bit expensive in that regard, but for example, my daughter does metalworking. She has open flames, and there are fumes, so you got to vent it properly. The pottery, you need a big kiln.
That's a good point. So sometimes even the infrastructure itself can be like a huge either investment for the property manager or the artist. These businesses aren't simple operations all the time. And even things that seem simple might not be as well. I know in the past we had some artists who had more of their art business together. They were pretty good at like productizing their visual works into digital things. So you could shop their shop and get like wallpaper or in some cases other products that were a really neat way for someone to manage, to achieve sort of like product scale without themselves having to manage a ton of stuff. But for potters, they've got to deal with so much.
And again, a couple of examples of that, if I may, one of which is my daughter. Yes, she's a goldsmith. And yes, her jewelry costs a lot of money relative to going to Walmart or someplace of that nature. But she also makes pet tags using cheaper materials. She makes baby bracelets in silver as opposed to in gold. One of our most popular watercolorists ever, Dick Graves, made prints of his watercolors, big ones. He had lampshades of his watercolors. You got to figure out where to market things. A lot of photographers, or a lot of painters, you can get prints of the paintings on canvas, so it looks like it's painted. So you find a way to have people say, "Oh, I love your work. I can't afford that painting, but I would love this package of postcards of your stuff." So you got to have stuff that covers that spectrum, because one helps pay for the other.
Have you yourself ever worked directly with an artist who's going through that process, or have you seen anyone do it really well? Because I think that's really hard for people. I don't think it's intuitive.
It is not intuitive, and it's a balancing act.
Okay.
I do art for me. Yeah, but if you've got to make a living at it, you've got to do it and be able to sell it. So how do you take what you love and make it work for you in some other ways as well. And I've done that quite a bit, actually. One of the other things, and it's hard to believe sometimes, but it's absolutely true, a lot of visual artists aren't good at showing themselves. Okay? Putting a booth together that looks good is not the same thing as having a lot of good paintings to put in that booth. And some people don't have that transition option. Another of the reasons why we have art students that come in and help volunteer. I should mention, we need volunteers. Always, we can use volunteers. Go to our webpage, go to our Facebook page, and simply fill out a form. Let us know through email. That's a toughie, GSR Fine Art Festival @gmail.com. Okay. But the art students that come in, it's like, oh, I could do this. Maybe I need to slightly alter the way I'm doing my work to make myself a little more marketable. There's nothing wrong with making pottery that's useful as opposed to just looks beautiful. Yeah. And having a combination of those kinds of things. We have a potter by the name of Adama. He comes out of Africa. He's got vibrant colors, huge platters, all sorts of other really great things. His best seller is an egg poacher. It's a little cup with a fitted lid. You put 2 eggs in it, and you put it in your microwave, and a minute later, you got poached eggs. And he's got half of a table of them because they sell well.
You know, what's funny is I think I have one of those handmade by a potter, and I think I got it as a gift from my brother or mom or something like that. But that's wild.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to offend someone by saying this, but when people talk about, oh, I didn't know what this is, I said it's situated at a time that it's right at the start of the holiday shopping season. So on Black Friday, go to Walmart or a place like that and buy all the junk for the people you don't really care about. And on Saturday and Sunday, come to us and buy beautiful things for the people you love. Because there's lots of stuff there for gifts. There really is.
That's awesome. Well, support local art in that way.
I'm going to mention one more thing about that, by the way, just coincidentally. Our corporate sponsors, and we've got a fair number of them, we actually gift them half of their money back in GSR bucks. They can hand them out in any way they want to. Free Press, for example, often gives them back to us, and we hand them out to our patrons. We will have a little thing called the 12 Days of GSR leading up to the show. And it allows you to go in and draw an envelope off of our little ugly Scrooge Christmas tree. And there will be 1, 2, 3, or 5 GSR buck tickets, each of them worth $5 in there. It's cash as long as you're buying something from one of the artists. We take no profit from that. It's straight across the board. But it's, again, to encourage people to come in that first time.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think it's awesome that we've got it here. I don't know if I was able to go before. I think I did go one time before pre-pandemic, but I haven't been able to go since. So I'll have to try and return. And
I'll go on Saturday if you want to go on Saturday.
Well, it is my birthday, so I don't know what I'll do.
I know a place that has really good wine and beer.
Oh, well, hey. We shall see. I'm looking forward to it though. So yeah, thanks for coming on the show and sharing with us about the GSR Festival. Before we wrap it up here, are there any other things that someone should either know before showing up? A lot of our audience are artists, probably who've thought about applying to show in it. Is that still an option? Probably not by the time we release it.
No, actually the process is it catches some of our artists a little bit by surprise. Our deadline is technically the 1st of September.
Okay.
There's a little fudge factor there. We allow for snail mail and a few other things. But basically, they need to know whether they're in or not fairly early in the process, especially the ones that do a lot of these because they have a schedule and they know what they're doing every weekend and they need to know they're in or they're not. So we have to have that jury as early as we can for that. But certainly, if you're interested in it, get on our mailing list.
Okay.
because we have a list of artists and authors that we simply say, hey, folks, and I believe it's April 1st, the forms are out there. You go to our webpage, again, gsrfineartfestival.com. There's a menu bar at the top. Click on artists and authors, and the first thing that pops up are 2 forms of application. You can either print it off and mail it to us, or you can fill it out and hit send.
Cool. Well, it seems like we've got the right sequence for people to go to this year's GSR Festival, check it out, see how they'd want to show up next year, sign up to the mailing list, find out about the next year's application date, and
Give it a go.
Yeah, give it a go. Cool.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure.
Look forward to seeing you down there this year.
Yeah.
Take care.